All right, so today I'm going to talk about some of my favorite bugs. If you remember in a previous class, we had a bug where in the Quake C code, you shoot a rocket, and I made the rocket split into four rockets, and I wanted them to come out in a plane so that they'd be useful. But what they were coming out was at weird angles like this. It looked really cool, but it was buggy. And I've actually found the bug. The bug was I didn't normalize the this line right here. I didn't normalize the vector before calling make vectors, which gives you the front, up, and right vectors. And so it was coming out these cool, crazy angles. And after I fixed it, it worked actually fine. You shoot the rocket, and then it creates four rockets that come out in a plane. And I can show that to you real fast. But it's almost better with the bug. You know, it's like the Cyberpunk 2077 effect. The Cyberpunk 2077 in part was fun to play because the bugs kind of made it interesting. You know, you'd be sitting there like in the final combat, and Keanu Reeves is just sitting there T-posing, like watching you while T-posing the whole time. And it you know, my daughter hated the fact that they were actually fixing the bugs in Cyberpunk 2077. So let me fire up the game, and I'll show you the difference between the fixed version and the buggy version. Okay. So here is team one, soldier. Okay, so I'll run outside real fast. So if I were to shoot the rocket now with the fixed version, you can see that it is working as intended. So after a couple seconds, the rocket splits into four other rockets in a cross formation, and this is actually kind of useful. You know, you can shoot it, and then if you get the aim just right on the thing, you can just absolutely light into people. Like, I actually really dig this option, and I'm probably going to keep it in the official mod because that's, even though we just did that in class, like that's a cool, option, right? And you can maybe shoot yourself in the head like that. Now let me go back to the buggy version. Okay, so here's the code. So I forgot that I needed to normalize the velocity before passing it to make vectors. Make vectors is the library function in Quake that creates the forward vector, the right vector, and the up vector. And it requires a normalized vector. I didn't normalize it, and so I was getting these crazy vectors coming out of it. So if I take this out here and just make vectors self.velocity like that, then I'm going to put the bug back in. Buggy, but more fun than correct. Okay. So let me go ahead and rebuild it. Go fast. Compile just fine. Reload the map. And then come back in here. And then we can see the buggy version. And I'll let you guys vote on which one you like. So, get back to the soldier, and here we go. So, see how it comes off at like these wild angles, kind of. Shoot it, and then because it's not normalized, the rockets are not coming out in the plane that they're supposed to. They're sort of, I don't know, Jello one around. They're kind of coming out in these weird angles, but it just kind of looks cool. You know what I mean? And so, what do you guys think? Vote now. Do you like the buggy version better, or do you like the bug-free version better? Especially like if I'm going to leave it in the server as an option, because this is like kind of useless. You know what I mean? It's like rockets pointing straight up and stuff like that aren't going to hit anything. Whereas when they were horizontal, they could quite possibly hit a bunch of times even. And so like those fragments are actually very useful in the bug-free version, but on the buggy version, I think it looks cooler. So you tell me. You like this one better? The fixed one? Okay. Like seriously, like if I was going to leave it in, which one do you like better? The fixed version has 4 kill shots, so I know, right? Like if you can, like, it's actually tactically a pretty interesting option because it forces you to fight like at a really weird distance, like a pretty long range. And if you can fight at that distance and hit somebody, with a rocket right next to them, it's just going to shotgun right into them and just absolutely obliterate them, especially if they're in a quarter. Like they're going to get hit by 5 rockets essentially. The splintered rockets do half damage, and so that's a bit of a balancing factor on it. But I don't know. So you like the fixed version better? Okay, so I'll put the fixed version back in. I agree. It's better from like a it's better from like a game balance and game fun perspective, but it doesn't visually look as cool as the buggy version. Okay, so there, compile, and there we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna leave that in the official release. I'll probably make it an option for you to buy, and but that notion, like that's something you should always look out for when you're doing game development, which is like what bugs can we like use, like what bugs are actually kind of cool. And a lot of people will talk about your game because of the bugs. Like for example, I'm going to go on a spiel right now on a game called Ultima Online. Ultima Online was really the first MMORPG. There were earlier MMORPGs. There's one called like Meridian 59, but really Ultima Online is like the is really like the one game that really kicked off the MMORPG like genre, really. And so Ultima Online, I played the beta. I never gave them any actual money. I played the beta extensively, and it was one of the buggiest messes ever, and was incredible because of how buggy it was. I had no interest in playing the fixed version. So one of the funniest things, and this isn't really a bug, it was just kind of a funny story. The guy at Lord British, Richard Garriott, who made the Ultima series. Ultima is a long-standing RPG series. He made Ultima Online, and then he entered the world to do some like role playing with people. And a person, just to be funny, like dropped a wall of fire on him. And he was supposed to have set like his invincible flag, so he was like an unkillable NPC. He forgot to, and so so he died. And so somebody's like straight up assassinated Lord British, and then when he respawned, he like summoned all these demons on people and murdered them all and stuff like that. So, absolutely fantastic event in RPG history. And that though is not like really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about was all of the other fantastic bugs that existed in the game. And the reason why the game was so fantastic and buggy at the same time was because they did something that a lot of games have not tried to do since, which is they wanted to make the game act realistically, right? So Ultima is very famous role-playing series for it sort of like working with whatever it was you're trying to do. Like if you took grain, you could like grind it up in a mortar and get like dough, and if you put dough into an oven, you'd get bread. Like, kind of pointless stuff, but like the game would sort of like work with whatever it was you're trying to do. And Ultima Online continued that notion of having a realistic world. And because of the abject failure of Ultima Online to accomplish a realistic world, like no MMO since then has actually even attempted to do this, much to my disappointment, because it was so incredible. So let me give you some examples. So when the beta first came out, not the game came out, when the beta came out, they tried to have like realistic animals. So they wanted the animals to breed. And so, you got more wolves when you'd have a mommy wolf and a daddy wolf that loved each other very much. They'd make a baby wolf. And then the wolves would like eat rabbits, and then the rabbits would breed like rabbits. And they created this whole like ecosystem of like animals that would like behave like animals. And you can go out there and you can kill the animals and skin them and use the skins to make, fur, armor, or whatever. And the trouble is, when they started up the game, people went out there and murdered all of the animals. And then there were no animals left. So if you tried playing the game at any moment other than right when they reset the servers, there would be nothing for you to kill except the hardest monsters in the game that nobody could kill. So like, I've got a dagger. I just spawned in. I'm a new adventure. Let me go take on that really hard, bear or something. And it would just maul you to death, And so, great idea. And they spent a lot of time like trying to get this realistic ecosystem to work, and it just constantly would result in just everything being genocided by the masses of adventurers coming out of the cities and just killing everything in a radius around every city, because you could choose which city in the world you spawned in. Let's see if I can pull up a map of Ultima Online. So you could spawn in here's Britannia and Scarabray and you and things like that. So you could spawn in any one of these cities, and so basically what happened was there was like a dead zone around each one of these cities, because people would go out there and just kill everything, right? And so the next thing they tried doing was they tried adding spawn points. So they basically said if the animal population on the server drops below a certain amount, then spawn a monster, spawn an animal or whatever. And the trouble with that also was that it was like server wide, right? And so like if you murdered everything in Britain and they had spawn points kind of like scattered around the world, is that what would happen is that there'd just be no monsters in your area. You would sort of push the entire animal population to the other parts of the world. And then when adventurers kill people there, it would randomly respawn in like one of a dozen different points, and then you might get animals back there. But if there was a imbalance on the server between people in the Britannia area and the U area, then you would end up having some areas that were just absolutely carpeted with hostile wolves, and some areas that were completely devoid of any animals whatsoever. Then one of the greatest bugs ever happened, which was they put a spawn point on like a random island, and I don't know which one it is. This was like 25 years ago, so I honestly don't remember which island it was. But let's just say, for the point of argument, it was like this one here. No, it wouldn't be that one. Maybe this one here. Let's just say for the sake of argument, it's this one. So what happened was, like, people would go out and they would reset the servers constantly, and so they would reset the server, they'd turn it back on, and then people would immediately grab a sword and go out and pulverize the entire wolf and bunny population in the areas around the starting cities. And so, the wolf would die, it would respawn intrinsic, and then intrinsic would kill the wolf, and it would respawn in Britannia, and they would kill the wolf again, it would respawn here. But eventually it would randomly roll to this island here. And nobody could get to that island because ships were actually they were actually expensive to get a ship. They had player-owned ships, and you could steal other people's ships. This is the game. Like, if you bought a ship, your ship's just on the map, and people could just sail up and kill you and take your ship. And all of that investment, because ships, again, were expensive. Like, they were not cheap. Then they could just take your ship, and now you don't have a ship. And so early in the game, like, nobody had ships. And so my guild was one of the first people to be able to build a ship. And so we started sailing around. And what we found was that, think about this. You're killing things randomly around the whole world. What eventually happens to every animal in the entire game? Do you guys think about what happens? Person logs off and you steal their ship. Yeah. Like you would find like people would pull up a ship on an island, and then they'd leave it to go explore on the island. Then you could just walk up and steal their ship and sail off with it. Now they're stuck on the island forever. So you had to have people guarding your ship. No more animals? No. There were still animals. Just 100% of them on the entire server were on one very small island off the coast that nobody could get to. So people would, again, genocide everything, and everything would look dead, but they're actually still in the server, just in one place. And that one island, which I call the Island of Animals, I'll see if I can find a screenshot of it somewhere. Because I've never seen in any of the discussions online, because there's a lot of people that have played Ultima Online that have talked about these fantastic bugs over the years. I've never seen a single person, even the developers, talk about the Island of Animals. So it's entirely possible the people that made it didn't know about this bug, because they eventually scrapped the animal breeding system. And it's entirely possible they actually didn't know that this bug existed, because I've never seen anybody else online talk about this bug before. And so I'll see if I can find screenshots of it in a second. The trouble is, though, the island was so packed with animals, you actually couldn't land on it. it was wall to wall animals. So, like, it was just every pixel on the island was covered with a different animal. You physically couldn't get off your boat to get onto the island of animals to kill the animals. It was so impenetrable. And so what we had to do was we had to stay on our boat and shoot fireballs at the animals and kill them, right? But every time you cast a spell, it required reagents, and you'd run through your reagents. But what would happen is this: you'd kill the animals, and they would die, and then they would spawn. Let's say here in Vesper, and here in you, and here in Trinsic or whatever, and then adventurers are over there, like, oh, cool, a wolf, die, and then it would respawn and respawn and respawn, and eventually to respawn back on the island of animals. And so we were essentially, all of us were trying to clear just even enough room to take like one step onto the island so we could start killing all of these animals. We couldn't because we were essentially competing. It was like a water pressure, right? Like we were butchering like hippopotamuses, like I don't even remember what animals were, giraffes, like we're just gunning down zebras left and right, and then they would respawn back on top of the spot because literally everybody else in Ultima Online were murdering the animals and putting them back on the island of animals, and we were trying to murder them just enough to be able to get on the island that we could actually loot the stuff that we were killing, because we couldn't actually get there to pick up the stuff because there was zero room on the island. It was 100% filled with animals, and we couldn't even get off the ship to pick up the skins of the things. So we sat there for like, I don't know, a while just butchering animals, and we could not ever get onto the island of animals. It was just one of the best bugs I've ever seen in my life. But like I said, they did end up scrapping the notion of having like realistic breeding and realistic animal spawning and things like that. So they eventually switched to a more basic RPG spawn system where like just monsters will pop in every so often. They actually had hard spawn points in the world, which was kind of, in my opinion, not a good system, because you could just cap the spawn point, right? But one of the cool things about it was they accidentally had a spawn point out in the woods somewhere. I'm just going to say here, I actually don't remember. Like I said, it's been 25 years. But they actually had a spawn point where a guard would spawn. And let me tell you about the guards in Ultima Online, because this was a whole set of bugs as well. So in Ultima Online, you could steal from other people. You could murder your fellow players. It was a complete anything goes game. Like the game's like, you can behave however you want, And the trouble is that like that made towns very dangerous, right? Like if you're in town and somebody just shanks you and they take your stuff and you die, and they take your stuff and you come back to life and you have no stuff now. Like it's actually really like, this isn't like an MMO where like I've got all my tier 3 purple armor and I died and I respawn. No. You lose all your stuff. Like all of your progression, you've lost. It is massively a big deal to die in the game if you're not with friends. And now if you were with friends, your friends might protect your body and you come back to life and get your stuff back, right? But like if you're just walking around in Britannia, people would just shank you and take your stuff. And so they added guards to the game. And so the guards would say, oh, there's a crime over there, and they'd come over, and the guards would have like the top level equipment, the top level swords, things like that. So naturally people started farming the guards. Guards had all the best equipment. Let's farm the guards. And so they would punch, their fellow guildmate in the face. Guard's like, halt. And the guard comes wandering over. And then all the people in the guild go stab, and kill the guard and take their stuff. Right. And now all the player killer guild, because they keep doing this over and over again, they have all of the ultimate top tier equipment. And now they can go and murder everybody with impunity, including the guards, because they are now better equipped, than the guards are. So the way that they farmed the guards was actually pretty ingenious. They would put boxes on the ground. And again, this is from 25 years ago, so I'd be surprised if anybody has any screenshots of this. Yeah, maybe. Sure, let's say that's it. So they would put boxes on the ground and they would form a maze, right? And then they would punch their fellow, guildmate in the middle of the maze, and the guard's like, halt, and it starts trying to navigate and pathfind through the maze. And as it's sitting there walking around all the twists and turns of the maze, everybody's sitting there with their arrows, just like die, and then another guard's like, oh, you just murdered a guard, and it would halt and it would run over and it would start trying to navigate the maze. And it's like, and it's pathfinding oftentimes would break and it would run out and then run back in, and it would just sit there, and the AI would be like, ah, and you just arrow them to death. And then you would have a bunch of dead guards. You take all their stuff, and now you've got the ultimate tier equipment. So they fixed that by adding in mages that could teleport. So, another thing my guild would do is we'd sit on a rooftop and block the path up. Just stand on the spot, and then the guards would all mill about the building like halt, 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 and you could just sit there and shoot them with arrows and kill them. And so they added in mages that would then teleport a squad of guards in on top of you, and the mages were quite hard to kill and stuff like that. Even still, it didn't really stop anything. There was a bank in town where you could put your stuff to avoid being robbed. The trouble is, in order to get to the bank, you had to walk in. And so there's a doorway, and you'd open the door to the bank, and there would be a line of pickpockets like this, just standing there. Hi, welcome to Wells Fargo. And as you walk past them, all of them click pickpocket on you. And by the time you get to the bank to make the deposit, all your stuff's gone. You're like, what happened to all my money? You look at your bag, and all of your stuff's gone. And so they made it so that you can't steal bags out of bags, because that'd be too easy. You would get 30 things at once. And so if you ever wanted to protect your stuff from being pickpocketed, you had to get a bag and put it inside of your bag and put your money inside of the bag. And then pickpockets were just completely unable to steal a bag from a bag, because that was the hackish solution they made for that. So only noobs kept their stuff in their high-level equipment inventory. You always put your stuff inside of a bag inside of your bag, and then pickpockets are like, can't do anything about that. Just a dumb system. And you could level up. The leveling system was amazing in Ultima Online. Basically, you got better at things by doing the things, which is a brilliant idea. It was later on used in games like Oblivion and Skyrim and things like that, right? You keep blocking, your blocking score goes up. You keep stabbing, your stabbity skills go up. You know what I mean? So that point-based, that skill-based leveling, it's not XP. There's no real XP in the game. You just get better at things by doing the things. But it's an MMO, right? And so that's a problem. And so what they added to the game was a skill cap. Okay. So if you wanted, you could go out with your buddy and go into the woods. And I did this. You just sit there and pickpocket each other. And you just sit there for like an hour, and you get your pickpocketing up to like 100, right? It's max. If you wanted to get better at sword fighting, you just run around and stab monsters. If you get better at cooking, you cook. And they had a whole cooking system with like different recipes and things like that. The hardest thing to level, though, was spellcasting. Because every time you cast a spell, it costs reagents. And reagents were actually somewhat hard to come by. Like, you'd have to go into a dungeon and kill spiders, and you get spider webs. And every spider web you get allows you to cast a spell once. And so, in order to get to 100 spell casting, you would have to cast like tens of thousands of spider webs worth of spells. And that was just a grind to do. There was, however, a skill called magic resistance. And so when people cast spells on you, then it would exercise your magic resistance, and you'd start gaining points in magic resistance. And so people would cast non-damaging spells like Wall of Paralysis, and then people would just sit there and run back and forth in the Wall of Paralysis for like an hour. Paralyzed, paralyzed, paralyzed. You've gained a point of magic resistance. Paralyzed, paralyzed. And then the mage would cast the Wall of Paralysis again, and you just sit there and do that for like an hour, and now you're essentially immune to magic, which was nice. So the way that people would level magic is one of the really clever things that the people that made Ultima Online did was they made it possible to learn skills by watching skills, and it happened automatically. You didn't have any choice in that. And so if you were on screen and somebody cast a spell, you gained experience in spellcasting, whether you wanted to or not. So you didn't get as much as if you did it yourself. It was like, I don't remember what the multiplier was. It was like 10% or something like that. So what people would do is they'd set up magic academies. And so what they do is they'd wall off. They'd put a wall around a place. And if they were really clever, they would, have people charging fees and things like that, right? And so basically, you go up, you're like, I would like to go to I would like to go to Hogwarts, please. And you pay money to the guy at the gate, and then you go in to a room, and then there's a person who's like summoning demons and casting fireballs and things like that over and over again, and you just sit there for hours, and your magic score just keeps going up and going up and going up because everyone's just sitting there fireballing. And if you wanted to level your magic resistance, you just sit there and run around like fireball me, and then you just sit there, and there'd just be all these people in the audience just watching, McGonagall fireball, each other, and you level up your skills. And so it was a very cheap way of getting to, high levels of magic, because you could just watch people instead of having to pay, the sulfur and was it the black pearls and things like that you needed to cast the spells. It's brilliant. Like, it's a great system. The trouble is, it was involuntary. It was involuntary, and they made a really dumb choice. It kind of makes sense. Like, if I explain it to you, it probably will make sense to you. They said that when you hit skill cap, and the skill cap was, I'm tempted to say like 300 points and change, maybe 400, something like that. I don't exactly remember the exact numbers, but basically you could sort of like 100% a few different skills, right? And then after that, if you leveled up, like let's say you maximized anatomy and sword swinging and I don't know, medicine or something, right? That then anytime you gained a point in another skill, maybe it was 4, I don't know. Anytime you gain a point in another skill, it would drop one of your highest skills. It would drop one of your highest skills, because their notion was the best skill that you had would decay first. Like, you lose your Olympic edge. If you're 100%, which was really hard to get 100% like sword stabbing. Like, you had to sit there and grind it for a long time to get 100% at sword stabbing. Like, you're talking like a couple hours, like maybe 3 or 4 hours. Like, it was fairly easy to go from like 0 to 90, and then going from 90 to 100 had like this exponential amount of times you had to stab things. It took a long time. And so if you're like an Olympic level, swordsman, and then you are like, I'm going to learn magic, then your Olympic edge drops like really quickly to 90%. And so you lose like your top edge. And it kind of makes sense. Kind of. But the trouble is, it also worked when you're observing skills from other people. And so my guild used this in PvP. We had combat chefs. You guys guess what our combat chefs would do? Like, we would line up for a field battle, right? Like, there's 30 of us on one side, there's 30 people on the other side. We would send our chefs in first. Does anyone know what our strategy was? Given the components of the game that I've told you, we'll do a little game design analysis here, right? If you observe a skill, you learn a skill, and you lose 1 point off your top skill. So what would we do with our combat chefs before these field battles? Yes, chefs. They would go out there. The whole enemy clan is lined up. They're all at 100%, swordsmanship and anatomy and everything like this. And we send people forward, and we start a fire, and we put a skillet down. We start cooking omelets. Cooking omelets and cooking omelets and cooking omelets, one after another. Bam, egg, omelet, 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 omelet. Any ideas? Yeah, cook. We would cook in front of the enemy, and they would sit there and be like, "What the hell are they doing? Why are they? I thought we were here to fight. We're not. Why are they? Why are they just sitting there like egg, egg?" We'd have like 5 people out there, like master chefs, like. You're confused? Okay. They were too. And that's why they're just sitting there watching it. Then one of them checked their skills. Do you understand what just happened? They used to have 100 in swordsmanship. Their cooking skills went up. Yes, they went from 0 in cooking to like 30 or 40. And so that meant that their Olympic level swordsmanship and crit skills and things like that dropped by 30 or 40 points. And so we would stand back just outside of the radius where you would learn a skill, and our chefs would just go into the radius with the enemy team. And where they had 100% in swordsmanship before, which again is like hours of work, to grind up to that level of perfection, they now had a 60, or it was scattered among 3 skills. So like it dropped from like 100 to like a 75, let's say. And so they learned cooking, but they no longer were any good at combat because they learned how to make omelets du fromage. And so we would just knock all of the edge off the entire enemy would lose. I can't even estimate, like 20 hours of their life by watching our combat chefs go up there and drop eggs on a skittle and just produce omelet after omelet. And then we'd go in and massacre them because their skills were nothing compared to ours. So, yeah, that was the thing. That was the thing. What other bugs are good? So I was talking about the guards. Yeah, there was a guard that spawned in the wilderness, and so the guard that spawned in the wilderness, like I don't remember where it was. It might have been over here somewhere actually. He's a guard, and so over time they just made the guards just like these death machines, and so you cannot commit a crime anywhere near a guard because they just got tired of people farming them, right? And getting all the best stuff. So they accidentally had a guard just spawn out in the wilderness somewhere. So you're just like walking around and you're like, oh, let's rob that guy. And you like shoot an arrow at him. And the guard's like, what did you do? What's that, mate? What? And the guard comes over and just massacres you. And then the person that you tried ganking comes over and takes your stuff. And now you've lost all of your stuff. And so, what's the link to the game? You can play it, but it's not, I wouldn't, I mean, it's pretty dated. They come out with a new client and stuff, but all the bugs are fixed, so like what's the point, right? Like the whole point of this game was like you could tame dragons and like just massacre people. Yeah, like we'll get all the death you had here, and that's your inventory there. So yeah, so you could like build houses out in the wilderness, and so a lot of people found this guard out in the wilderness and just built a town around him because he would enforce law and order in this player-built town. And that's something that I haven't seen really. Like Arch Age tried doing like player-built houses and things like that. But yeah, in Ultima, like you could just go out into the wilderness, be like, we're gonna form a city and build wizard towers and cabins and things like that there. So let's see if there's a guard in here somewhere because there's a lot of death there. Okay, so anyway, so let's talk about the economy. So they tried doing a realistic economy as well, and so they built this whole like realistic supply and demand system, and so what would happen is the shopkeepers would have looks like a lot of fun. The shopkeepers would have a fixed amount of gold. It's like in Skyrim, when in Skyrim, guard, like you try selling something to like one of the shopkeepers, and they're like, oh, I don't have enough money to buy that off you. And so they did the same thing in Ultima Online, where they actually try to have like a fixed amount of gold in the world, which is a terrible idea if you ask any economist. Right, especially in a virtual world like this. And so they had all sorts of problems with inflation and deflation and things like that, because essentially there would be a fixed amount of gold in the world, and it would just transfer from person to person. So if one person had it all, nobody else has any money. But they tried this. They tried the system. It's one of the most fantastic bugs ever. The the way that it worked was that shopkeepers, if you kept selling swords to the shopkeeper's supply would go up, so the amount he would offer you would drop. So basically, if there's a glut of goblin swords on the marketplace, goblin swords aren't worth very much because people aren't buying it, right? But if people start buying the swords and there is a shortage of them, then the price of the swords would go up. It actually makes sense. Like I think this would be a brilliant thing in a real MMO if they could get it to work right, which is dubious. But basically, if everybody's killing goblins and selling their swords, and the shopkeeper's like, dude, I got 1,000 already. I don't need any more. I'll offer you a penny for it. So the price drops. And then people stop trying to sell it to them, and maybe they'll melt it down for scrap or something. So on the flip side, like if there's a shortage, the price goes up. So the trouble is, they raise the price, right? But the game didn't check if the price that they raised it to was more than the money that the shopkeeper had. So I remember trying to sell a single feather, which it should be worth nothing, right? And I go in there to sell the feather, and the guy's he's like, it's worth 100,000 gold pieces. I'm like, what the hell? 100,000 gold pieces for one feather? Sign me up. Here, you can have it. He's like, oh, I don't have enough money. I was like, what? He's like, now the price is 101,000. Okay, I'll sell it to you. I still don't have enough money. Price is now 102,000. I was like, that's really funny. Because what happened was the price, if the guy would keep raising the price because he was out of feathers, right? But he would raise the price beyond even his maximum gold limit. And once that happened, you could never sell him a feather because he would not have enough money. And the price would just go up and up and up and up and up, and he would never be able to buy it. And so he would never have any in stock. And so the price would just keep going up, and you'd have these ridiculous, prices for feathers. And so if you're really smart, you could feasibly feed him enough money by like if you were smart about it, like you could feasibly buy out all of his stock and get him enough money in hand that he would be liquid. You could sell him a feather and then get all your stuff back. So, depending on when you catch the supply and demand in its cycle, you could feasibly buy out the entire stock from the blacksmith for one feather. But usually the price would be too high, even even if you bought everything, you wouldn't be able to give him enough money for him to be able to purchase a feather off of you. They had mining in the game. You could go to the caves and mine mines, and then haul it back to the blacksmith to make swords and things like that. The trouble is, like, there was a weight limit in the game, right? So you couldn't carry that much ore at a time. Like, you'd do a run intrinsic over and over again, like bringing back these rocks that are really big and heavy, and you can only melt a little bit at a time. And it was a big grind to do it. But what my buddy found was that he would put all of the ore into a barrel. Okay. And if you pick up the barrel, you can't move. Cool. But you can drop the barrel. And so what he would do is he would move like 3 tiles down, pick up the barrel, and then drop it 3 tiles south, and then he'd move south, and then pick up the barrel and drop the barrel. And then he was able to shuttle large, like we're talking like 100,000 pounds worth of ore. He'd be able to shuttle it in one shipment and then just absolutely destroy the market with all of the crafted goods and things like that. Because normally people have to grind really hard to make a Viking sword or whatever the best sword was in the game. And he was able to do it in just one shipment. The trouble is, it's a PvP game. And so what happened was, after people started figuring out that you could sort of shuttle the barrels like that, people would just walk up to somebody's barrel and just take some stuff out of it. It's like free ore. Like, cool. They'd walk up and take your stuff. And so you had to hire guards to convoy your ore shipment from the mountains to Trinsic. And so you'd have people with swords like standing there like, oh, no, move along. It's free real estate. Exactly. Yeah. And so, that's one of the reasons why being in a guild was so OP, was you would be able to have guild members. Like, I would do it sometimes. I'd just stand there and, like, move along. Nope. No free ore for you today, and we would guard the shipment as the person's picking up this, 1,000,000-pound barrel and moving it 6 tiles at a time, all the way to town. And then he would sit there and craft, top tier armor for like everybody. And you'd be kitted out completely in the top tier stuff within a day of the game being out. What are some other great things? I found an item in the game that makes you look like an orc. And it was a fairly rare item. I mean, people know about it now, but like in the beta, like nobody had seen it before. And so I put on this mask and I looked like an orc. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And so like I walked up to some people in the wilderness. I'm like, hello, players. My name is Orcus. Would you like to hire me for 5 gold pieces? And they're like, oh, it's an NPC. Cool. And so they handed me 5 gold. I'm like, very well, tell me what to do. And they're like, hey, do you see that fort over there? And I would write like, I'm sorry, I do not understand that command. Please type either attack or defend. And they're like, attack. Who do you wish to attack? That. And then I run over and start stabbing. And they're like, oh man, this AI is really good. Because it literally makes you look like one of the monsters in the game, you know? And it's like, I adventured with these guys for like, you know, a couple hours, them not knowing that I was actually a fellow player in the game, which is pretty amazing. You could also cast polymorph, like one of the higher level wizard spells was polymorph. You can actually become like a dragon or a demon or something like that. So me and my buddies would polymorph to become demons and then go through a moon gate, like the teleporter network they have. And right when we bust in, we'd scream, "It's an invasion! The demons are going to kill us!" You know, and there's always like 50 people there, and somebody would just like take a swing at me, and then the guards would like trigger, like, "What you do, mate? What was that?" And the guards start running in from all over the place, and the mages start fireballing people, and there's absolute chaos, and I start running around as a demon, just going, "Ah, I'm going to kill you all! I'm going to kill you all!" And I'm not attacking anybody. I'm just like walking around, you know. Ah, foolish mortals, the invasion of the demon princess has begun. And then people would start stabbing me, and the guards would murder them and murder them and murder them. And I'd run around, and after a while, all of the people at the Moon Gate are dead, and you take all their stuff. You leave. It's top tier trolling. Absolutely. And then you just go to the next town and do it again. And everybody would like try and murder you there. And then the guards murder all of the people, and you take all their stuff, and you go to the next town, and eventually, you know, people wise up to it. But you know, early in the beta, like people didn't even know that you could polymorph. You know, so you know, you'd always get somebody who'd take a swing at you. Once that happened, all chaos would break out as guards would start coming in, and they think the guards are there to fight the demons, of course, but they're actually there to kill the person who's being a hero. You know, they gun him down, and I'm like, yes, I have slaughtered you, ha ha ha. And they're like, oh damn, they're killing people. And they stab me, and then they die, and then it looks like I'm just standing atop a pile of corpses, and people come in, and they're like, oh dang, and then they stab me, and the guards kill them, and you know, you just sit there for like as long as you wanted on top of a pile of bodies. Another bug. Another bug was the fact you could hire NPCs, which is amazingly stupid. Is amazing. I'm not saying it's amazingly stupid. I'm saying it's amazing and stupid. So it's amazingly stupid because no game designer in his or her right mind should ever implement this. But you know, it's Ultima Online, so stupider is like the reason why you play it. So you can hire any NPC in the game. So imagine you're playing like World of Warcraft or whatever, right? And you go up to the bank and you're like, "Hey, banker, here's $5. You want to follow me around?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And then you leave with the banker, and then everyone's like, "Wait, where's the banker? Like, I'm trying to do banking. Banker's gone. Where's the blacksmith? Oh, he's out in the wilderness adventuring with Kearney. What? Yeah, he's paid him 2 gold pieces. He effed off, and he's out adventuring in the woods." And so you just offer money to any NPC in the game, and they're like, you know, I don't think any NPC, but you know, like you can go up to them and just be like, "Want some money? Sure. You know, all right, follow me around." And so, so we'd go into one of the towns because it didn't have a guard presence. So we would go into Buccaneer's Den area here, and we would what happened to my face? My face vanished. Doesn't matter. I don't know if you need to see my face, but whatever. Wow, my face. Okay, there we go. So we would go into this Buccaneer's Den area here, which was great because it didn't have guards, right? It was just a complete free-for-all zone. You know, you could just rob people, and that was the whole point of it, right? And so we'd go in there, and we'd hire an NPC, and then we go up to like the town like milkmaid and be like, "Yo, stab that other NPC over there," and she'd go up and start fighting him. And the 2 NPCs would fight each other, and one of them would die, and then we would take their stuff and then get your money back. Because remember, the game had realistic money. Every gold piece in the game was basically real. So if you handed them 5 gold pieces to adventure with you, they had 5 gold pieces in their corpse because they would die. And then you would hire another NPC and like, yo, attack that guy again. And that guy would die and take his stuff. And so there'd be a town blacksmith, and you just order the people in town to kill him, and then you take his stuff, and then you ordered the other people to attack each other, and you can have like an entire fight club where you hire the entire town, and just it's like the purge, where everybody's just running around stabbing each other, and it doesn't cost you anything because like, yeah, sure, it costs a little bit of upfront, but when they die, the money's still there, and you just take it back. And then people come into town, and they're like, where is everybody? They're dead. The entire town is dead. There is one NPC who's the survivor of Fight Club. That one still remains. Everybody else in town is dead. And so it's very dark. I know. But, we were beta testers, right? And so, this isn't something I do in a regular MMO. But, like, the whole point of the beta test was to try to find out, like, they set up all of these really interesting systems. Like, they set up these systems where, like, well, let's try having a town with no guards, because the guards would normally get mad at you if you hired somebody in Britannia to stab somebody. The guards would kill you because they know that you hired them to do it. But in this area there were no guards, and so we're like, all right, let's see how badly we can exploit this. We need a remake with all the bugs. I highly doubt like that source code still exists, but it was incredible, right? Because you're just like they just created all these really complicated systems that were horribly designed, but at the same time, like, they were so exploitable. Like that became like the fun. Like, I've never seen another game where you can have people running up and making omelets, to destroy other players, tens of hours of their effort, reaching the pinnacle of swordsmanship and magic. Like, they couldn't even cast high level spells because their magic scores would drop, or something like that. So, what is an MMO? So an MMO is a massively multiplayer online game, right? So MMORPGs are massively multiplayer online role-playing games. So the most famous one, of course, is World of Warcraft. But there have been many ones. Final Fantasy XI I played. PC Universe Online. Terra. EVE Online, I played EVE Online. Excel spreadsheets in outer space. Star Wars The Old Republic, I played that. I played a light side Sith Lord, which is hilarious. Guild Wars 2, I played a little bit. Elder Scrolls Online, I played a little bit. The trouble with MMOs is World of Warcraft, of course, and then Final Fantasy XIV. A lot of my friends still play that. And some people I know still play World of Warcraft, too. The Final Fantasy XIV is actually a really interesting case, because when it first came out, it was bad. It was just bad. It was so bad they actually pulled the game and redid it. And now it's apparently pretty good, but I still won't play it because I played the original and it was just bad. So Destiny's kind of an MMO, yeah. So but Ultima Online was really the first real MMO RPG to really take off. Like I said, I played like Meridian 59, which is before it too. But they really tried doing all of these like very realistic systems, and they found out why realism in video games don't work. The fact that you could kill a guard and take his stuff meant that people would kill guards. It had a paradoxical effect. The point of guards were to enforce law and order in Britannia, the capital, and what happened was people would just sit there and kill the guards repeatedly and take all their stuff. It had these like enormously like just everything would backfire on them. Let's make a realistic animal system. And then they get the Island of Animals, which, like I said, I don't know if anybody even knew about, because that was only for a few days. And so it's entirely possible that this video here is the only place where you will hear about the Island of Animals. The economy was just a glorious mess. Everything in Ultima Online was a glorious, hideous, beautiful mess. Everything about it was bad, and everything about it was incredible. So that's where I guess I will leave that. I honestly could just sit there and talk about the bugs of Ultima Online for more time, but those are kind of the major ones that I think that will give you an idea of something to think about when you're talking about game design. When you're making your own games, there's really that moment where you should think like, how realistic do I want it, or should I make compromises with reality for gameplay? You know. And at first, Ultima Online, it was all about realism, and then they had to keep compromising and compromising and compromising to make it more of a game that actually could work. You know, because nobody wants to play a game where the blacksmith is always off adventuring with people, or where feathers cost $100,000 but they can't give you any money, or where you can just murder people on the streets, or maybe you can. Maybe that part's fun, but okay. So that is my spiel on Ultima Online. All right. Well, so let me tell you a few of my favorite things. I just played the music. It's copyrighted, so if you want to look up the soundtrack for Ultima Online, it's pretty fire. For '97, a lot of MIDI files, stones. I actually learned how to play on the viola. So let me tell you about some of my favorite bugs too from my own stuff. So inside of the source code, let me pull this up right here. There used to be a single Boolean. A Boolean is something that could be either true or false, that held if you could move or not. And so there are various things that would set and clear the Boolean for whether or not you can move or not. So for example, if you feign death, and let me see if we can find the code for feign death. Function handling feign death. Okay, perfect. Okay. And so there would be a Boolean holding true or false if you're feigning death, and if you're feigning death, then it unfeigns death. Otherwise, then you feign death. And I had to add over the years, a lot of these, anything that says WK on it are bugs that I fixed in feign death, because first-person shooters really aren't based around the notion that somebody's a corpse. Like they kind of expect you're standing up and you can walk and things like that. And so, for example, people would be carrying the flag and then feign death, and then everyone's like, "Where's the flag?" Right? And so, if you are grappling, you can't feign death because then you're a corpse flying through the air. And if you're setting a death pack, you can't feign death because guess what? Setting a death pack, a death pack, prevents you from moving also. So what people would do is they would feign death, and they would set a death pack. A death pack is a giant explosion that kills everybody within line of sight, basically. And for one thing, that's a problem because you're just a corpse laying in the courtyard, and you just like put down like a giant pack of explosives. You're just like hee hee hee, and then you pop up and run off, and then the thing detonates and kills everybody. But the bigger problem with this is that death packing stops you from moving. It's like when you're setting the explosive, you're sitting there for like a while, like 3 or 4 seconds, like setting the death pack, and that would say you can't move. And then when the death packing would finish, it's like you can move now. And the feigning, when you feign death, it says you can't move, and then when you unfeign, you can move again. So what people would do is they would start setting a death pack, which stops them from moving. They would feign death, and then they would unfeign death, and now they can move again. And then they could run while setting this giant explosive backpack, and then go into like an area with a lot of people and drop this barrel of explosives and kill everybody. Alternatively, you can set a death pack, feign death. The death pack finishes getting built, and then it says you can move now. And now you're a corpse that can slide around the ground. And people would do that because it's very hard to shoot like this dead corpse face down on the ground, sliding face first. You're like, zombie. They just slide face first and grab the flag and slide out on their belly like a snake slithering through the level. It's absolutely horrific to watch. And the trouble is, like, the same bug kept cropping up over and over again because the people who made Team Fortress didn't expect that a demoman and a spy could ever be the same person, right? Because these were different classes, so it just wasn't an issue. And so we had to check all these different, combinations, and it became like this exponential amount of checks to stop all of the different things. That eventually, I was like, all right, forget about this. We're going to have a single function that is going to combine all these things together and figure out if you can move or not. And so if we Control Shift F on this, You see all the different places where this function is called, and the one with the equal sign is the place where it is. And then it's going to say if you're feigning death, or you're hacking a sentry gun, or you're setting a det pack, or you're building a sentry gun, then you can't move. And so this just handled all of the different, because there's an exponential number of combinations, like especially there's a lot of things that mess with your move speed in the game. And so every time you add something new that messes with your move speed, all of the other things that mess with your move speed would need to know about it. And that became like this insurmountable problem. It's actually a really good lesson for those of you that are in computer science. The notion of coupling, like who needs to know about what, why should the spy code need to know about the demoman det pack? And why should the hacking person need to know about the spy code and things like that? And all of them have to kind of know about each other. And you saw like in the previous thing, like there's just like this like huge amount of if statements that just became really annoying to deal with. So what I ended up doing was I pulled them all together into one spot here. And so this just handles it all. So this thing here is the one place that knows about things, basically. And so if you're feigning death, or you're hacking, or you're det packing, boom, you can't move. End of story. And so this flag here, this boolean here, it was being set and cleared by everybody, and it just became a nightmare trying to juggle all the different combinations. So one approach you can take if you ever run into this problem is to suck it all out into a separate function and have that sort of be the authority on if you can move or not. And it has to know about all the different things that modify movement, but they don't have to know about each other. And so it's maybe not a perfect solution, but I don't think there is really a perfect solution, because ultimately somebody has to know about something. You know what I mean? Like somebody has to be the person that says you can move, you cannot move. So if you can't move, then it stops you from moving. It sets your velocity to 0. It sets your max speed to 0. If you can move, then it grabs their maximum speed out of, if they're a normal class, it just grabs it from the defs.qc. Each of the different classes has a maximum speed set. If you're a custom, then there is a special variable called custom speed that is calculated for you. And so it resets your speed to be your max speed there. Then it modifies it. So if you are if you're in scuba gear and you're underwater, you move faster. If you're in scuba gear and you're out of water, you move slower because you're in flippers. And it actually used to be a worse penalty. It used to be -20, but I changed it to -10, so it's not too disadvantageous to be in scuba gear. So if you're so if you are in scuba gear and in water, then you move quite a bit faster. If you're in scuba gear and you are not in water, the exclamation mark means not, then it slows you down. And so this is another example of like game versus realism, because I wanted people to slow down because we're running around in flippers, and you should run slower. But as it turns out, it's just really annoying to like be slowed down by something you spend money on, So I added a little bit in for the realism, but it's not too noticeable or aggravating. If you are carrying the flag, it slows you down by half. If you are tranquilized, you are capped at 170 speed. If you are throwing C4, it reduces your speed by 2/3. If you have leg damage, it reduces your speed. So all of these things, which are found in different parts of the world, all got pulled into one spot here to resolve all of these issues. Because, for example, you could be firing the assault cannon and then feign death. And then when you release the assault cannon sets your speed back to the maximum. And now you're back to that problem we had before with all these dead bodies sliding around on the floor, like a snake, just sliding around on their bellies. It's really creepy. And so somewhere in here, you're going to see the code for, there it is. There's the code for the assault cannon. So the default assault cannon in Team Fortress doesn't allow you to move at all. I made it so you could move slightly while assault cannoning. I think Team Fortress 2 ended up allowing you to move as well. Does anyone know? So this is a one of my favorite bugs. This is the solution to one of my favorite bugs. And by favorite, I mean kind of disturbing, because you've got dead bodies running around everywhere before. So your homework assignment for Thursday is I want you to find the funnest bug you've ever seen in a video game. And if you've never played video games, then I don't know, Google famous bugs out there. And I want you to tell me why they were fun. Okay? I'm not talking about like, the game crashed. That's not fun. it's not fun when your game crashes. You know what I mean? I'm talking about fun bugs. You know, the kinds of bugs where you have to sit there and think for a moment and be like, huh, maybe I should leave that in there. Like I've shown you guys Jello water before. You know, that was a bug. Let me fire this up again. So like I told you guys before, Jello water was a bug that came about from me working on the. I did just switch monitors again. 1 second. There we go. From working on the scuba gear. So the scuba gear basically makes it so you don't sink. Like you see right here. Oh man, that water warp is crazy. There, turn that off. So when you're underwater, you normally you very slowly fall because you're like in water. So what I did was I added a little bit of upwards velocity to represent kind of like the scuba commando treading water. If you look at the original README files for Team Fortress 1, back in the day, 1997, you'll see that they'll say coming soon, a new class. Not the pyro, not the engineer, nope, the scuba commando. And so if you they never built it, you know. And I actually talked to Robin at E3 one of these years, and I asked him like, what, you know, whatever happened to the scuba commando? And he said his brother used to like hide out in the water in one of these maps and would shout scuba commando, and like kill people from the water. And so they thought it'd be fun to make a scuba commando, but it turns out having a class that only works on water maps is just not good game design, so they never built it. So I built it rather than. Actually, I don't need it right now. I don't need anything right now. Actually, let me just demonstrate Jello water. So I was like, well, you know, I'm making custom King Fortress. I don't need to make a class for it. I can make it an item you can buy. And so when I was messing with it, I added a little bit of upwards velocity to the person if you had the scuba gear. And what happened was this: I made it too big, and so the water turned into a giant trampoline. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, actually. You know, so I actually don't have the scuba gear right now. I am just a person with absolutely nothing. I didn't buy anything. But this actually really changes the terrain and the tactics of a map, because you can now bounce your way up to like the rooftop over here, or you can bounce your way over. If I had more speed, I could bounce over the thing and stuff like that. It actually makes the maps really interesting. So I left it in as a bug that became a feature. I don't have enough legs to get up there. But then custom kill. But then if you do have scuba gear with the Jello water, it turns off the Jello water. So that, and the reason for that wasn't because it's like I fixed the bug, but because some maps you actually do have to be able to swim into the water in order to do the map. So let me switch over to that real fast. Scuba gear is right there, and I'll just buy some legs and some armor. Okay. So for example, you can see how fast Quake 1 is versus like modern games, right? So like, for example, there is a underwater entrance to the into the flag room. And so with Jello water on, you would not be able to take that route there. You would not be able to take this route here, which is the way the bad guys come into the zone over there. And so I have the scuba commando fix the bug of Jello water so that it, like, if you have a map that needs you to be able to go through the water, you can purchase an upgrade to be able to go through it. So it doesn't like block you out of any map. So that was kind of my approach. So it was originally a feature of the scuba gear that if you hit water, it flung you up out of it. And then I flipped it so that if you set that server setting, everybody gets just completely yeeted out of the water. But if you have scuba gear, then you can jump in and you notice how the person's like not really sinking. They're sinking a little bit, but that's the treading water thing that I added that turned into Jello water. So, like I said, your homework assignment is going to be writing a little essay on your favorite bugs, like fun bugs, not like game crashing bugs or like, oh, my, Anthem hard, locked my PlayStation or whatever. I want you to write a bug on the fun bugs, the ones that like you still talk about today, like how I talk about the myriad bugs of Ultima Online and how much fun they were to mess around with. I never gave them $1, by the way. I never paid a single $1 for anything in Ultima Online. But I had a great time. I was a poor college student. I mean, what can you do? Yeah, so think about, like, I don't know, maybe it's Cyberpunk 2077 where the characters are riding around on motorcycles. Then all of a sudden they stand up and T-pose while riding on motorcycles. My daughter loved that one. Like I said, she was highly offended when they started fixing the bugs in Cyberpunk 2077 because she's like, "That's the best part." Like we just sit there and watch bug compilation videos for Cyberpunk, you know, and she would just laugh so hard, like snot would be coming out of her nose and stuff like that. So maybe a Bethesda game. Bethesda is famous for having bugs, some of which are fun, some of which are annoying. Like in Fallout 4, I had a bug where my followers would constantly fall through the floor and be stuck underneath the world, and so like I'd have to get a new follower, and then they would fall through the floor, and I'd have to get a new follower, and they would never respawn. They would never teleport back to you. Um, oh, somebody's playing the game. Yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, somebody's actually connecting to the server. That's fun. Yeah. Quit out before they join the stream. So yeah, Bethesda games are famous for having fun bugs. They typically leave their bug fixing to the community too. That's something I don't really like about that company, is that the unofficial bug fixes for Skyrim and stuff like that are usually. So the unofficial Oblivion patch. So Oblivion was the game before Skyrim, right? This mod is a joint effort to fix the vast amount of bugs in the official release. It's like, come on, dude. Like, come on. Don't just leave this up to the community, you know. So we have a list of how many bugs they fixed. Change log. Somewhere in here they tell you like how many bugs exactly they fixed, and it's let's see here. I don't know. It's a lot. Like the unofficial patches for like Skyrim and Morrowind and Oblivion and stuff like that have like just ungodly amounts of bug fixes in it. And it's a little unprofessional in my opinion to just rely on the community to fix it for you. The oh, was that you that joined, Victor? Okay. Um, that's funny. T pose and A pose, right? See, these are usually the two reference poses that you use in animation. So, that's Smash, right? Which Smash is that, Samantha? Ultimate Smash Ultimate, yeah. Yeah, that's actually a fairly common bug. Like when an animation fails to load, it just goes into the reference pose, which is either going to be a T pose or an A pose, and the animator screwed up, something, and that happens. Kingdom Come Deliverance had that bug. Kingdom Come Deliverance also had another one of my favorite bugs. Um, they would spawn pole arms on the guards, but the guards would occasionally they would bug and glitch and drop their pole arm. And the thing is, like, you can't you can pick up a pole arm, but you can't put it into your inventory. It's too big. You can't put it into your backpack. It's realistic, right? And so what happens is that the guards would then respawn a new pole arm, and then they would glitch and drop their pole arm again, and then they respawn another one. And so you'd walk into town, and there would just be like 5,000 pole arms, and you're just crunching over. Your horse is just kicking all of these spears out of the way when you walk into the town. So anyway, you guys all understand? Oh, that's kind of a fun. Oh, that was you. Okay. So yeah, so there's a lot of fun bugs like that. So just write up a couple paragraphs about the bugs in this game that are fun, and what makes them fun, and if you would and if you would consider actually making them official, right? Like I did for Jello Water. I actually took that bug, and I'm like, this is fun, and it's tactical. So I actually made it part of the game, just like I was earlier with that crucifix rocket, thinking about making it official. But I think you guys are right. I think it is a better weapon with it going at horizontal, because then it's actually useful and not just cool looking. Okay. Oh, they patched the Smash Bros glitch. Yeah. And Kingdom Come Deliverance also had problems with people just occasionally T-posing when their animations weren't loading. Picking up people with drones in Battlefield. uh, There's a great one in Skyrim. Let's see, where is my screenshots directory? Basically, the horses especially would glitch out a lot in Skyrim, and I got it once, just levitate into the sky, which was pretty amazing. Let's see here. Yeah, classic Bethesda person sitting through the bench. Good job, Bethesda. Let's see here. He was swimming around eternally. Yeah. Anyhow, so yeah, the levitating horse I think was on PlayStation, not on Steam here. No, but what happened was like it hit something and it started just rising up in the air, and then it just kept going. And so if you're as long as you're on the horse, you just sit there and you just fly up into the sky infinitely. I also saw a bug that I tried out with my daughter that did work. Was that if you're on a horse and you tilt it at a very steep angle and you get off, you actually fall through the world. So yeah. Anyhow, enough picking on Bethesda. Their games are very complicated, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of games just don't try to be complicated, is because it's a lot easier to bug test. When you put people on rails, when you keep them on a roller coaster and they just have to go down the rails, it's a lot easier to test all the possibilities than when you allow people to just go out there and just pick up a rock and throw it at something. Yeah. Okay, you guys understand? Favorite bugs. I want to read them on Thursday, and that's it for today. So nothing coding, no game making. We're just talking game design today. That's it. Peace out. Bye.